All right, welcome. Glad you all are here. This is the dating game. I am Nathan Allotey. Thanks for joining this session. This is my first time in LA, so I'm glad I'm here with you all. Yeah. Also, a good thing is I'm from Houston, Texas, and we also have Interstate 10 in Houston, Texas, and there's a lot of traffic on that. So it's nice to see, no matter where you are in the nation, there's traffic on I-10. So that's a good thing. But yeah, this is the dating game. We're going to do understanding price anchoring, and we're going to dive into what that means and how that looks. So more specifically, just for anybody who's wondering and or interested, these slides will be available. I did give them to the team here, but if you want to see some of the references that I have, if you go to this link, I reference different things that I've already written articles about, and you can see in more detail what I'm talking about, some of those examples, where they came from, my mindset, different things like that. You can see that. And also, I am recording the audio here as well as video. So whichever ends up coming first, I can get that out to whoever is on that list specifically. So just again, to reintroduce myself, I'm Nathan Allotey, digital marketing strategist. And I do web design as well, based in Houston, Texas. And here's a little bit of my background, and it relates to the story we're going to dive into today. So I went to Baylor University in Waco, Texas, and then I graduated during a recession, by the way. I graduated during a recession, and somebody said, hey, I know you like computers and things like that. You might want to look at HostGator. They're hiring. This is back in the day, so HostGator was great. It still is great. Still is great. Hopefully you can read between the lines there. But so worked at HostGator. A lot of smart people there. I think it's a great company. A lot of talent there. And then I remember HostGator was acquired and shared one of the same partners as Bluehost. So I started working on some partnerships with Bluehost as well. And Bluehost improved greatly. That was great. But during that time, a lot of people kept saying, how do you build a website? And for me, I looked at all the platforms and all the open source code that we had and different resources that we had. And WordPress was, in my opinion, the best solution for a lot of people. So I started learning WordPress and said, can we help people create sites, or are we just managing the server? They're like, nope, just manage the server, don't worry about that. So I said, okay, well, maybe I can learn how to do this and help other people on my own through freelance. So I started my own business in Focus Media. One of my clients was Envato, and I helped them with the website redesign, and they said, as a part of the redesign, you get access to all of our tutorials. I was like, oh, awesome. And then I read through those and I said, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing with web design. I thought I knew, I don't know what I'm doing. So I learned a little better on how to manage that, and I didn't know what I didn't know. So then I went to get my MBA at the University of Houston, in Houston, Texas, and learned about business. I tied what I learned about business to what I already knew about technology, started getting better. But I didn't want to just sit on all this knowledge, so I started my own website, nathanallotey.com, and a podcast. So I teach about the business of freelance and everything that I've learned in my MBA, as well as whatever I've learned through practical knowledge in my business. I'm just sharing that because it's the resource I wish I had when I started. So I just want to share that information, and that is available. So that's who I am. Let's dive in. So this is a picture of the dating game. It still goes on today. It's been going on since like 60s, 70s, all the way to today. Fairly popular event. And no matter the iteration of it, it goes something like this. There's a host and a contestant on one side, and the contestant asks three people different questions. They haven't seen them, so all they can do is hear them. And they ask them different questions, and based on their responses at the end, they say, who do you want to go on a date with? Have you all seen this before somehow? Yeah, correct. Contestant number one, do you like frogs, and different things like that, and they talk about whatever they're going to talk about. And my question for everybody just to think about is, what is this show about? Is it about dating? Is it about mystery? Is it about couples? Is it about dating? What is this show about? Keep that in mind as we go through this and go through this process. So really, this was my client onboarding process. It went something like this. Somebody emails me and I look at it. Okay, I'm like, okay, great. And then I might email them back. Or sometimes they call, I call them back, whatever it works. I do some background research, see what's going on. Then I say, let's have a formal meeting, a consultation, something of that nature. We get on Skype or on the phone. If they're local, we meet in person. If they're remote, maybe we set a remote meeting. And then I determine, okay, I'll talk to this client. I think I'm going to move forward with them. I think we're a good fit for each other. So then I may do some research to move on to the next step, and then I present a proposal to them. That was like my onboarding process. And a couple things would happen. Client would negotiate and try to figure out what they can change. Client would accept, but then they would do scope creep. So in other words, they'd say, I just have one little thing to add. One little thing. I'm like, a list is not one little thing, but regardless of that, they would say something to that nature, or they would decline. They would see it, maybe get intimidated by the price or something, and say, no, thank you. And I was spending too much time with the client and the proposal process and not closing. That's a lot of time to invest to not close on a client. So I really started thinking about this, and I started reading a lot about pricing, different pricing strategies. I mentioned I was in my MBA program. One of my favorite classes was pricing strategies. So I was reading a lot of books on different things. And one of the things I stumbled upon, and it's very true in pricing and business and other things, it's just how we function and live as humans, is one of the things I stumbled on was cognitive bias. Now, I'm not going to stretch your intelligence, but I'll read this because it's a formal definition and I like how they worded it. Cognitive bias refers to the systematic pattern of derivation from any norm or rationality in judgment, whereby inferences about other people and situations may be drawn in an illogical fashion. Individuals create their own subjective reality from the perception of input. A lot of words. Really, to summarize that down, your brain takes shortcuts to process complex decisions quickly. We all do it. I do it. It makes sense. That's just how we think and how we function when we don't have the time to research everything. And so a good example of this is there was a professor, and he went to a website and saw like their pricing was messed up. It said, hey, if you want the bundle, it's like $100, but if you want this by itself, it's even more money. He's like, that doesn't make any sense. So he called the company and said, hey, I think you have an error in your pricing. And said, oh, you're right, there's an error, let's fix it. And he's like, but that made him curious. He's like, I wonder, and he happened to be a professor who was looking into price elasticity. And he was like, I wonder if I put this in a survey, how people would react to it, even though it was a mistake. So he found, 100 MIT students, because MIT students are supposed to be smart, right? So he went to them and asked them a survey, and this is what he did. And it was for a newspaper website. He said, okay, you can get the web-only version of the newspaper for $59, or you can get the web and print for $125. It's pretty straightforward. You're like, $125 for a newspaper? Do people still use those? So this is what the survey results were. 68% said, I'll take web only. 32% web and print. I said, okay, he surveyed 100 more students and pretty much asked them the same thing, but added a third option. He said, okay, web only is $59, print only is $125, and web and print together as a bundle is $125 as well. And he put these survey results out there, got everybody's responses, and the survey came back. 16% chose web only, nobody chose print only, and web and print was 84%. He's like, wow, how did this invert just when I added a third option or a distraction, right? But what ended up happening when he did this pretty much was price anchoring, right? And price anchoring is a common cognitive bias that refers to the tendency to heavily rely on the first piece of information you're offered when making decisions. So in other words, now that they knew how much the print cost by itself and the web cost by itself, it made them think, oh, both of them together are a deal, right? And we see this all the time. We don't think anything of it. It's pretty common nowadays, but it's so common, it's scary, and I don't think we're fully aware of how often it's used on us, whether it be in our business, whether it be marketing to us as a consumer, or whether it be just in life in general with any decision that we make. So the interesting point about this is the only gauge people have for pricing is what they've paid in the past. So when I was pitching to different clients and showing my proposals, some of them would say things like, that's expensive. Like, expensive compared to what? I would just tell people, I think a $5,000 to $6,000 website is very inexpensive, because I've been in rooms where people paid $100K for them. But to some other people who paid $500, they're thinking, whoa, that's 10 times, right? So, but the only gauge they have is what they've paid in the past. And that's what they're referencing in their mind when I was giving them a single price with nothing else. So I started seeing price anchoring everywhere. Now that I read about it, I noticed it. I started seeing it everywhere. For those who don't know, this is from The Sixth Sense. If you haven't seen The Sixth Sense, I don't know what to tell you. It's an old movie. Spoilers, I guess. But yeah, anyway, I See Dead People was the reference, but this is I See Price Anchoring. This is my version of it. And I started seeing it everywhere, anywhere I looked. I started seeing it. This is Contestants Row from The Price is Right, which still is on today. And what happens is they call people down, they call your name, they say, come on down. You run down and you're supposed to guess or give an estimate on how much you think an appliance is or a product is. So that's the whole premise behind it. And what tends to happen is people guess. They say $750. Somebody says, $550, $923. And if you notice, correct, and they go one up. So, somebody will say, $924. But in this picture, somebody said $940, and he actually won, and he's happy because he was closest. You have to guess the closest without going over. But really, his guess was just anchored on everybody else's guess. Did he really think it was $940, or did he wait for everybody to give an answer and then finally said $940? Right? So his guess was anchored on what everybody else said. And this is a house, very nice house, I think. Not my house. I don't know whose house it is. So if this is anybody's house who's in the room, thank you for the picture. But so this is somebody's house, and it looks very nice, but they use this in real estate. They use price anchoring in real estate. When appraisers, they view similar homes to find out what's the price of your home, right? They say, okay, we got one house. Let's see what's been sold in a certain amount of time that is similar to your home, and then they come back and say, this is the value of your home. It's anchoring again. So I even see it in that point. And with romantic comedies, I saw this as well. Man, I'm looking at this list. I'm like, man, a lot of these movies are not that good except for 2 of them. But anyway, so no matter what it is, I started seeing anchoring being used, and a lot of it came out in romantic comedies. But I would love to go through all these romantic comedies today, but we don't have time for that. But we do have time to look at one example. And before we get to that example, all these movies introduce choice and perception. That's one thing that I noticed about all these romantic comedies. Choice and perception was throughout all of them. And the one example we're going to focus on is Hitch, starring Will Smith, Kevin James, and many other people. But more specifically in this movie, you have Will Smith. His character is a date doctor, as they call it, or a consultant. He tries to help people get the person they really want to date, and he coaches them up to do that, right? And Kevin James' character really likes someone, but he feels like they're out of his league and he can't really get to them. So he's being coached throughout the movie on what to do. So pretty much the whole movie was about positioning. Kevin James, your position is here. I'm going to coach you to change your positioning so that you can actually get with the person that you're interested in. That's the whole movie. What I saw was about positioning. And then as an interesting thing happened in the movie. Oh, and I apologize. This is spoiler alert. If you haven't seen this movie, I don't know what to tell you. It's old. It comes on TV. It comes on TNT. I don't know what to tell you. It's on a regular TV stations all the time. So I don't know what to tell you. And the bootleg is on YouTube. So I really don't know what to tell you. It's available. That's all I can really say about it. But an interesting thing happened in the movie. Will Smith's character was coaching Kevin James' character, but then he met a young lady played by Eva Mendes that he really liked. And he's like, man, all of my normal moves and things that I tell other people to do, they're not really working for me. And he never really went in and dated a person because in the past, at least dated someone seriously, because in the past he was hurt. So he never really got too serious. However, there was a point towards the end when Will Smith did get serious, and that only happened when choice was introduced. When choice was introduced, Will Smith's character was forced to act. But before that, he had the choice of maybe losing someone. But when that was presented to him, he finally took action. And I took from that, at least when I'm watching it, like, wow, sometimes you do have to present a choice to people in order for them to take action. And I really started thinking about that. So again, introducing choice to your pricing helps the client make a decision in your favor. And I was not doing this in the past. I was just putting my price out there by itself, and I didn't have any aspect of choice for them to take action. The only choice they had was, do I work with Nathan, yes or no? So I wasn't really taking control of the choice that I was presenting, right? So that's something I was thinking about and something I really needed to work on and work out in my business. So going from there, here's a great example. We're gonna look at price anchoring the Steve Jobs way. Everybody knows who Steve Jobs is? All right, we'll say was. He still lives on through his products. But yeah, price anchoring the Steve Jobs way. So take your mind back. There's not these versions of smartphones that we have yet. Take your mind back. Internet is a little slower. Take your mind back to 2010, right? Where there was no traffic in LA, back to 2010. It's the Apple keynote. They're giving a presentation. They already have the iPhone. They're talking about a few other things, and people are just in anticipation of what's going on. Steve Jobs comes up with a smirk on his face. The entire time he has a smirk on his face. So it's like, what is going on? He's probably thinking like, we're about to make so much money today. But he's smiling the whole way through like a Cheshire cat and giving a presentation. And a certain thing comes up and he's like, we want to reveal to you something big today, something revolutionary. That yes, there are computers and yes, there are netbooks, but what if you could have a book that was a computer? Oh, okay. So what he's talking about is the iPad. He comes out and says, I talked to the team and we were talking about it. We're like, this is like revolutionary and, it has to be under $1,000. So he's like, yeah, $999 is under $1,000, but I don't know if that's good enough. So we were talking to the team and we wanted everyone in the room to have an iPad. So we're like, what can we do to make everyone have an iPad? And so I told them, it's not gonna be $999. It's gonna be $499, and like the $499 fell down and like crashed and played sound effects over the $999, so it broke it. And then the crowd goes crazy. They're clapping. They start instantly blogging about it and writing things about it. And it's like everyone's happy. And I'm kind of laughing, like, what are you talking about? It was never $999. What are you talking? Did that meeting even happen? I don't know. I don't know if it happened or not. It was never $99. It was always $499 because that's what you said it was. This is the first time we ever heard about it. But regardless, it was a great example of how to anchor your price. He gave a higher price, then came behind it and gave a lower price. And it was a great way to anchor without even having anyone to see the product physically yet. And they already were blogging about it and talking about it. And a lot of the blogs, you can search for this, it said, man, it was gonna be $1,000, but it's really only $500. And I was like, yeah, sure it was. So that's another example of anchoring once again, and it was used in a masterful way there. And in terms of perception, you know what movie this is from? Does anyone know? Inception. Okay, thank you. So no more spoilers or anything. Great. So this is from Inception. It's all about perception and mindset, and is what you're looking at really real? But the concept of a dream and a dream and a dream was in the movie. Like you could dream, and while you're dreaming, you can have another dream. And while you're dreaming, you can have another dream, and you can do different things to put ideas in people's mind. That was the whole idea behind it. But I started thinking about this, and I'm like, price inception? Is that like a thing? I'm not really sure. And really, kind of is in terms of that, because again, car dealerships use this. You have like Toyota Corolla, Toyota Camry, and a Lexus. And I don't know if you notice in the picture, the Camry and the Lexus have like the same exact alloy wheels, but that's another story. But they do price anchoring again with this. They say, what type of car would you like? One of these three. They're all, in a sense, four-door sedans. What do you want? And then they say, well, do you want the regular edition or the special edition? And you're like, I don't know the difference, but sure. You're not really sure. But again, you're so focused on what you're choosing and customizing for your car, you're not even thinking about what the cost is. So even if you choose a Camry and you know the price for a Camry, then you get into regular versus special. And now you're like, which one do I want? Not even thinking about like there technically is a lower rung of car vehicles you could get. You're not even thinking about that anymore. So they have you on this price inception, and they use it very well in the automobile industry. But also they use it pretty much online. We see this all the time. And this is an example of Dropbox Business. This is their page. If you scroll down a little more, you see their pricing. And again, anchoring again, right? So this is pretty standard. We see this everywhere. We think it's common, but really, once again, it's anchoring. They're just saying, hey, this is what you can get, but we're going to coach you and say advanced is the best thing to really get. That's why it's blue. You should pick that. Based on what? I don't know, but regardless, you should have it. And anytime you see contact us, there's probably going to be a lot of zeros. But they did a great job of pointing out the differences in this case, because they do have below that little check boxes just indicating these are the differences between each one. So they're doing a great job of calling out these are the differences between each package. Another example, this is Spotify, right? Again, on Spotify, you can get it free or you can get premium. What's the difference? Again, you scroll down a little bit, you see, once again, they're anchoring. In this case, they're taking a different approach. They're saying this is everything that you're missing out on. So they're saying it's free and you can sign up right now, but you're missing out on a lot. And they really did a great job demonstrating by graying out the features of the free package of what you're really missing out on. And they're trying to coach you to get premium. And trust me, Spotify will remind you that you do not have premium very often. They will remind you. But they did a great job, again, of anchoring your decision on what to do. And even I went to Seattle and for the first time, and even when I flew to Seattle, I was like, let me get on the internet, I'll pay for it. And again, I was like, here's anchoring again. They're telling me, hey, for $6 you can get an hour. For $10 you can get 2 hours. But for the full flight, for an extra $1, you get internet access for the whole flight. Now I can weigh my options and say, how much do I have time? Do I have to fly? This, that, or the other. But again, they're just helping along my decision of getting internet. Anchoring once again. So some of the pricing pages that I called out, I thought they did a great job of collecting pricing pages that use anchoring very well. This is just a quick link you could jot down if you want to see some of the best pricing pages that I've seen on the net. They mainly have to do with tech startups and tech companies and different things of that nature, but they do a good job in terms of color, explaining the differences and calling out and coaching people to make a decision. This is just a good collection of those pages and how they executed it. But the real thing I started thinking is, does this really work? I know people do it, I know people use it, we see it all over the place, but does it really work? And the question I really was asking was, does it really work for me? It's easy that other companies are doing it, but what about me and my business in trying to close proposals and land clients? Does it really work for me? And I had to think about it, but the way I think about things is a little different. I say something like this: if this principle works, then it should work if I try it on something obscure. So if it really works, it should work in other contexts, because it's cognitive bias and decision making and different things of that nature. So while I was learning about this and thinking about this principle, I remember I was talking to my friend, and my friend was telling me, hey Nathan, what's been going on? We've been catching up, we were talking, and again, I was telling him about what I was learning and different things that had to do with cognitive bias, and I read these books, and again, we get back to the dating game, and I even talked to him a little bit about this. But the dating game, I asked earlier, what is this show about? And I even was telling my friend, what is this show about? We were talking about it. And some people would say, again, dating. Some people it's about talking to people and different things of that nature. But it's a little more than that. On the dating game, technically the contestant has a choice and a freedom to say, you know what? I don't like any of these people. I don't like the sound of their voice. I don't like their answers. I don't like any of these people. I'm not choosing anyone. But nobody does that. They always end up choosing one person. They never just say nobody, even though they always have the option to. And that's because this show is about introducing choice. Because they're saying, these 3 contestants are here, they were forced to make a decision to choose one, even though they always had the freedom to say, I don't want any of them. So again, they used anchoring and cognitive bias to almost eliminate the choice of I don't want anybody. That's really what I saw in this show after reading and learning all these things. And I was like, wow, I guess that's fun and entertaining, because it would be very fun if everybody said, nobody. The show would lose a lot of ratings, or the people would get depressed because they feel like nobody wants them. But either way, it wouldn't be good. But they ended up removing or eliminating that option of I don't want anyone. And this could work practically, but I had to test it on something obscure. So as I mentioned, I was talking to my friend, and I'll explain this. I was talking to my friend, and I was like, yeah, I'm learning about all this stuff. Like, for example, the dating game uses cognitive bias. He's just listening, like, man, whatever. And I'm like, oh, by the way, you know, I will be going to LA very soon. He's like, oh, cool. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to LA for, you know, a wedding. And, you know, I really want to see this young lady, but I don't know. She's very picky. She's very cautious in just like dating anyone. So I'm really not sure what to do. He's like, oh, man, that's funny. You should use like what you learned about cognitive bias on her. Ha, ha, ha. And I'm like, yeah, I probably should. So he's like, really? Well, what would you do? I'm like, I don't know. I've been learning about building landing pages. And when you build a landing page, you need to do this. And you can work in like packaging and cognitive bias with it. So he's like, yeah, you should build a landing page. I'm like, man, that's stupid. So I'm about to show you a landing page I built for that trip. And I changed some of the details. This is a true story, but I changed some of the details to protect the innocent. Yeah, I was coming to LA for a wedding, for Ryan Gosling's wedding to be exact. I was coming to the wedding and I made this landing page here because I really wanted to see Rihanna. So I said, hey, I'm coming to your town. I would really love to connect with you. But, you know, will we have a chance to get together and see what's going on? Maybe go out on a date. But I have 3 choices for you. We can go to Ryan Gosling's wedding together because I have a +1 and you can choose that on Friday. If you're too busy, I understand. On Saturday, hey, we can grab a bite to eat. I found a couple places in LA. It would be great to do that. But hey, if you're busy on Friday and Saturday, I know you're a spiritual person and you go to church. So hey, maybe I can just go to church and after church we get something to eat. One of those 3. And that's what I was thinking. And like a true landing page, I had an FAQ section. And on that section, I said, here are some questions you might have. Why did I make this website? Can you choose more than one option? Do you need an answer? And a quick hint, whenever you're developing an FAQ section, try to position the questions so the answer is yes. That way the person's saying yes in their mind. I'm just applying what I learned. That's it. I'm just applying what I learned. So I positioned that, and it had some logic built in. Like if she clicked a certain option, then it would like do some things in the background and even automate, send her a different email. Yeah, that's some nerd stuff. Anyway, it had all those things in the background, and that's what I did. And oh my God, it worked. Yeah, she chose an option, you know, hashtag landing page and chill. She chose an option, and yeah, so I was like, great. But again, I saw other people try to take this person on dates. You're like, no, because the choice they presented was yes or no. So I was like, I guess this really does work. Or maybe, you know, I'm just so handsome. I don't know. Either way, but I did try this out, and yeah, it did work in that context. So again, price anchoring shifts the client's mind from yes or no to which option will I choose. And that's why it should be implemented and used more often, because you're switching somebody's mindset. And again, it's not gaming the system. Like I said, everywhere we go, this is used. Even when you go and get gas, you see it every time, right? And they're using it because this is just how people make decisions, especially when they don't have enough information at their disposal. This is how they make decisions. We can't always go on our smartphone and quickly look up an answer. So let's try to coach people down the choice of choosing us, because we really believe it's the right choice. But again, how can you apply this pricing principle to your business? And I just have a few examples that we can walk through. But more specifically, something like this. In your business, if you're presenting any type of option or have a proposal, try to come up with a basic, a plus, and an advanced level that you're offering someone. So the basic one is whatever they brought to the table, whatever the problem is that you're solving, that's what you're offering with basic. It solves the core problem for the customer, and make sure you understand the scope. And of course, you should be pricing to make some type of profit. Whatever your hourly rate is, or whatever you know your time is worth, you have to position it to make a profit. So if somebody comes to you and asks for something, the basic is delivering on that promise, delivering on what they asked for. The plus is everything. Of course, you're delivering on what they asked for, but you're introducing some type of recurring revenue or retainer. And I've found that this is good when you're trying to add items that will make managing deliverable a little easier, right? So that's the plus. And then advanced is everything that I mentioned before, but it's a premium offer that you're giving to a client, and we're going to go through some examples. It's a premium offer, and most of the time you're protecting their specific investment. You're protecting whatever they invested on the website as a whole. So, and someone asked me this, because I talked about this a little bit on my site, and if you're looking for like ranges of what to do and somewhat of a template to figure out what you should price when you're coming up with basic, plus, and advanced, basic, like I said, solves a core problem, that's the price. And then whatever price you did for that, plus, you can add a little more to it, like, 1.5 times 1.5 times 2.2. And then lastly, advanced is about 3 to 5 times the amount. And it doesn't matter what it is, it's just really just a guideline. You can change this as you see fit. I've come up with a price and said I'm only gonna add 500 more to it, and I didn't use this, right? But the whole point is develop your 3 packages so that they can see the difference of what the value truly is, right? That's the whole goal with that. So the other goal with what we're doing here is to get credit for everything that you do. One mistake that I did, or I view it as a mistake, is I think I offered too much to my clients. I would say, I can make you a website, and don't worry, you have some revisions, that's okay, I'll take care of that for you. You have a question about SEO, well, I can add this plugin for you, no problem. No big deal. Oh, you need backups? Oh, I provide backups. They're included. But I was just throwing in so much that clients started to expect me to do all of those things and didn't really capture and or know what the value was of everything that I was doing for them, right? So the other thing is get credit for everything you do. Don't bundle everything and the kitchen sink together. Try to separate out things. Not because you want to nickel and dime somebody, but because you want them to really see and know everything that I'm doing for you is valuable and it has a value attached to it. But if you don't separate it out, they will not know that and just think it comes along with the website, right? And I would encourage anyone to think about what their clients request fairly frequently in the type of work that you do, whether you're a copywriter, web designer, developer. Think about what people ask for on the regular, and you kind of don't offer it or maybe even don't like it, but you end up doing it anyway. Like for me, it would be design a website, and I say, can you give me the content? And they say, do you mind like reading through it, just looking it over, because it might have some mistakes. Do you mind just giving it a quick glance over? And sometimes, sure, I did that, good customer service, but I never really liked or enjoyed doing that, right? But again, because I just did it to be nice in the name of good customer service, they didn't really see the value of it. So that, for me, was an example of something that I could use. And you can do many different things or use many different things for anchoring and or for building your pricing packages in your proposals or even in the final quote. And these are just some examples, whether it's tutorials, whether it's SEO services, whether you're actually offering a marketing strategy. I know that was big for me. I used to build a website and say, here you go, bye, on to the next client. But that's not what they want. They actually wanted people to come to the website, but I didn't give them anything. I didn't give them a plan on how to do that. Some companies are aware and have a plan. A lot of people don't. So that was something I could offer as well. And then the list goes on. But just to walk through some examples, tutorial videos, right? Does anyone know about this site? WP101.com. Have you been there before? Managed by someone named Sean, who's from Houston. He's from Houston, but again, he's just offering WordPress tutorials on how to use WordPress, and with every new version that comes out, he records videos and offers it to people, and he allows different people to purchase it, white label it, and offer it to their clients. And you can see this on his site. Oh, look what he's doing. He's anchoring us. But so once again, he said, hey, you can have access to these videos, $20 a month, or you just pay annually, right? And there's even an option, white label and different things of that nature. So again, if you're working with clients and you're specifically similar to me, you're doing web design, you could easily say, here's your website, but I'm willing to make you some custom video tutorials on some common things that you have to do, and it's included, right? And that's another thing I used to do and just throw that in there, but again, they didn't see how valuable it is. But then I started breaking that out and saying, here's your website, or you can pay me like $250 more, $500 more, and I'll make these custom suite of videos for you so that you don't have to call me at 2 a.m. You can just do it yourself. And they're like, oh, thank you, man. Yeah, I need that. So that's something you could break out. I mentioned editing earlier. And with editing, I didn't like doing it. I don't know if anyone likes doing it. That's a great thing, so you can collaborate with other people. But the one thing that I saw is Grammarly, right? Grammarly is a tool. It does like over 200 checks that Microsoft Word doesn't check for. And now I could easily say, and more quickly say, okay, yes, you want me to give these things a quick glance over? That's possible. I actually have a tool and a resource I could use to help with that, but it's going to be for this price. Or maybe I build that into the proposal. Here's your website by itself. But if you want this advanced version, you can get videos and 200 checks that Microsoft Word does not check for, and it even rearranges your sentence structure to make sure it's proper. The list goes on. I could easily do that and offer that to someone and use that to help build my packages, right? Automated backups, like I said, I used to throw this in, but I'm the one paying for the space. So technically, I'm losing money on it because I didn't really account for the fact that I'm paying for an indefinite amount of time just to provide backup space, right? A lot of times I tell clients, hey, you can set up your own Dropbox, let's move on. Do they ever do it? No, they don't do it. So if I'm the one that's gonna end up doing it anyway, I might as well get an account and then put a value on what it is I'm offering and then work that into my proposals, right? And another thing that you could do, there was a site called WP Curve, still exists. But if you go there, you actually will be redirected to GoDaddy. By the way, this is not a sponsored talk, but anyway, you'll be redirected to GoDaddy. And again, GoDaddy is offering a similar service. They say, hey, we can take care of any questions that you have. This is really good to stop scope creep, right? So you can offer this. You know, some of the things that they're offering, like automated backups, fixing WordPress problems, maybe upgrades, the maintaining of a website, break that out. That can be some of your recurring revenue. Some people are saying, oh yeah, of course, offer that. But I'm just saying, apply the same pricing principle of price anchoring, use that with that. So here's your website, however, you're gonna need to maintain it. You can easily go online and look to how to maintain it. However, I don't mind taking care of that for you. It's gonna be this much more a month on an ongoing basis, right? And again, if you go to their site, they're anchoring what that option is. We could technically do the same thing since we're the main one that's dealing face-to-face with clients on a daily, weekly basis anyway. We could do the same thing, right? If we wanted to say, pay this retainer fee, this is what it includes. So you can go here to even get ideas on how to anchor your own business. Original design files. I like to say this for those who make logos or anything of that nature. You can say, here's the logo by itself. But if you want the original files for your team, your designer, your people to change things, it costs this much more. Because having the original, a lot of people ask for it, but that's perfectly fine, but just make it clear there's more value there if I give this to you, right? And it's not nickel and diming, it's just, again, you're building your packages. User testing is another thing I like to try. Something like Usability Hub, you can go there and say, you can do a preference survey. So maybe you're working on a logo and you've come up with 3 or 2 different designs. You can make a preference test for free. You can make a preference test, join a Slack group full of designers or full of people that are in the target market, put that in there and say, what do you like best? They choose and say, oh, I like this one best. So it's a preference test and you actually have some data to back up why you made your design decisions. But again, when you present it in the proposal, you can say, I can give you the logo by itself, or I can give you the logo with the original design files, or I can give you the logo with original design files and I'll do some user research behind it, all for this price, and you're building your packages. So we have to learn the difference between customer service and customer assumption. Like I said, I thought I was doing good customer service, but really I was creating the wrong assumptions in my client's mind of what the value is truly worth, right? So again, this is just a quick summary, and I mentioned these slides are available. So in just some talking points for basic, plus, and advanced, let them build off one another, let them relate to one another, you know, right? You can't say something like, here's your website design files, but if you also would like a Swedish massage, it's this much. It's like, that doesn't really tie into what we're talking about, but I will take the massage, right? You know, either way, but make sure it just relates to one another when you are building these things. So just some quick notes before we close out, and then, you know, we do have questions we can talk through, but just before we close out, it's always use price anchoring when presenting a proposal or giving a quote. If it's a client you already qualified, you want to work with them, and you already came up with something, come up with another offer, even if it's just one other thing. Think about what you can add to enhance that. And always focus on services that have increased value when you're building these tiers. And I just made a mention to that, but make sure it relates to what you're doing and can actually help them. At least for web design, I know off the top of my head, somebody is always looking for SEO. I don't always have to be the one to do it. I could even partner with another company and build that in there and present it to someone. Make sure each option is actually profitable, because you don't want to get caught in the place of endless scope creep or doing things, and even though you had multiple packages and you landed the client, now you're losing money. You don't want that. But also, regardless of what they pick, update the project scope in your contract based on whatever it is that they did select with that specifically. So yeah, so that's what I had. So thank you all for your patience, for listening. Yeah, definitely appreciate that. But then I also will say we do have some time for some questions, because I believe, we have a few times for some questions before we have to get and transition to the next session, which I think is 2:30 if I'm not mistaken. But we'll actually leave at like 2:20 for some transition time. So if anybody has any questions about what they're offering, we can just go through that really quick. Yeah, so again, the question, funny. The first question was just about, did I learn that in the MBA program? Did I see that? I saw that in multiple places. I did see that in the MBA program and the pricing classes that we took, in terms of how certain case studies and businesses like Best Buy and a few others built their pricing. A lot of times they did it with products though. You go into Best Buy, you see your favorite charger by Samsung, Sony, and then you see Rocket Fish. It's funny because I know how much they cost to make those things. Not that much, but they still work well. Again, they're anchoring your decision, so whichever one you buy, they're making profit. So I did see that in the MBA program, but I saw how much it was used in the market and a lot of things that I read in different books, and that there's a science behind it as well. So, but this information is really out there and it is available. So there's different resources which you can see this. Your second question, he said, have I seen House Hunters International? They kind of do the same thing, right? They say, one thing about that show, it makes no sense. They'll say, yeah, I'm a cookie dough farmer. And this is my partner. They work. My partner works, and they are a custom shoelace designer, and our budget is $5 million. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? But anyway, that's another story. And they go through 3 homes, and they say pick one. Again, it's not good TV for them to say nothing. So I don't know if they have it in the contract or anything, but there are a few times where people could deny. Good, which is true, because if you really don't like it, and they're not really highlighting this, but of course they got some money for being on the show, right? So then that's probably why their budget's so high. That's another story though. But yeah, so that's another thing as well. It's not really good TV for people to say no, but it's a reality that happens sometimes. If you anchor the right way, not too often. I know there are a few more hands that went up. Yes, sir, in the front and white. I take a different approach. I tell people, what do you want to do? And then I make recommendations on what they think would be best. I'm like, you definitely are going to need these items, because it's things that they don't really think they need. Like in the case of backups, I remember I had a client, I knew they needed them, but they said, I don't want them. I don't want to pay extra. I said, okay. And their site, they canceled their hosting before getting their files, and they lost their site. Now, technically, I was doing backups anyway, because I knew the person wasn't going to listen. But they came back and said, do you have a backup? I said, I actually do, but it's going to cost this much. But they weren't mad at me because they're the ones who said no to it. But from that perspective, I always tend to recommend that this is what you should do. And I tend to add on things that will only enhance that. Like at the base level, this is what you need. So what you just outlined to me, if I knew they needed a blog and a few other things, I say that's like a must. Right. And I really don't break out the individual pricing. I just say this is a must, it's a part of it. And then everything on top of that is just going to enhance it. I might say something like, I could speed up your website, or I could do some SEO for you. But at the base level, they need those things. With what you're doing, that makes sense, and it's going to be a larger total. So, but you're just focusing on all these individual elements have value in and of themselves. I don't break them out like that. I just say this is the price, and then I jump to the next tier, and then now they have to decide whether they want something or not. If we can talk, if they want to reduce scope of something or work, we can talk through that too. But there's certain things I don't budge on anymore, and then it just becomes, hey, there's other. I can recommend another company. It just comes to that as well, because I don't mind letting the client go if it's not the best fit. I know there are more questions. Yes, right here in the front. Yeah, I do a little bit of coaching as well. I tend to focus on time and number of sessions. So like if you went to my website now and went to coaching, you would see a 1 hour session costs this much, a 2 hour session is this, 3 hour session is this, and it's different meeting dates in which we're having, and the prices are different. Technically, if you book a larger amount of time or more sessions, you're getting a discount. So I'm using anchoring there again, but I base it on the number of times you're obligated to meet with me. There's that. Also, besides that point, you could also focus on follow-up, right? So another thing I do offer is I say, here's a coaching session, and I'm actually going to give you a written follow-up of certain things or a plan that you can actually execute that I will expect you to complete. If you don't complete it, you're not hurting me. We already had a session. But these are some things I would like to hold you accountable for, and I can call you at a future date, but it's this price, right? So you can just add on different things to encourage them to take the advice you gave them. Or maybe if you wanted to set up something to track their progress or track their journey, you could easily set up something like a day one journal for them, and y'all get a shared account, and then you say, hey, I'll check in on your journal to see where you're at. That's not the base level, that's the second level. So you can do different things that encourage them to finish the process. Was that good enough to answer your question? Okay, cool. Yes, ma'am, right here. It's really up to you, but 2 or 3 tends to be the max, because then people start getting too caught up in what decision to make. So at the minimum, I always say 2, because it's like you're going to choose one of these. 3, if I only add in 3 if I'm like, let me just throw in this option to see if I can really get them to do 10 times as much and just see if they go for it. But that's me kind of just shooting for the stars. They always end up picking like the middle of the other one. Sometimes they do pick the third option. I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. Okay, let me get right on that. So, but I really say at least 2 to 3, because when you start getting more and more, now they start getting confused back to where they originally were, like, what do I even do? There's 4 options. And maybe those options turn into phases, right? You just break those out, which I've done as well. You say, phase 1 will do this, phase 2 will do this, 3 will do this, and they can just wait to pay for those things. But that's something else that I've tried out as well. There's nothing wrong with experimenting to see what happens with 4, but I don't want to overload people's decision making. Yeah. We had, yes sir, right here in the hat. After I qualify them, I think to qualify people, I tend to ask, I have a funny story about this, but I'm not going to tell. Long story short, I worked with a client without researching them, and then they had like a past with like federal warrants, and I was like, crap, why didn't I research them? So now I really qualify clients and research them pretty much. So I say, can they afford me? So I might even throw out a range of prices if we're just talking. Can they afford me? Do I like what their company values are? Do I align with those values? Do I like the interaction and rapport that we have? And then when I Google them. Then when I do some research, I see, okay, are they clear? Are they not a felon? Different things like that. Okay, I think it's safe to work with this person, even if I have to look on LinkedIn and different things of that nature. Sometimes Facebook, say, what do they do on the weekends? All right, cool. No dead bodies. I work with them. So different things like that. Yeah. So I only qualify them before getting to this point. Yes, sir, in the white. Since we're at WordCamp, WordPress. No, I used to use WordPress for everything. It's like WordPress can do anything. Yes, in a sense, but I tend to think about what the needs are for the project and say what will be the easiest for them. I remember building a site in WordPress. I thought it was fine. I even used a page builder, so it'd be easier for them. They didn't like it. I don't know why. I thought it was easy. I'm like, this is not even WordPress. This is like WordPress made easy. They didn't like it. But when I replicated that same site on Squarespace, they liked it. I don't know why. So I tend to work with the client to see what would work best. WordPress is going to be like my first, recommendation that I give, and then it kind of goes from there on what else they may have. So it just depends on the needs of it. They have like thousands of products they need to do, then I probably won't do WordPress. Maybe I would recommend something else that's like e-commerce based, right? So yes, that means we're probably out of time, right?
Yeah, can you give people like maybe 30 more seconds, and then we can all have 5 minutes.
Okay, yeah, so she said 30 more seconds for questions, which means I'll talk very quickly on the next question that's asked, and then we can transition in the next 5 minutes to the next session. They can get set up. Yes, sir, in the black. Yes, like, or you could even invert it, like a lot of times, but I don't want to shock people, so I tend to show them, this is what you asked for, this is how it could be better, this is the best, right? So this is what you asked for. This is how it could be made better. This is the best recommendation. You could flip it, but I don't want to give them sticker shock by seeing such a high price they have a heart attack. No, I don't like heart attacks. I do know CPR though, but yeah. But anyway, I tend to show them the lowest one first and then go from there. All right. I will be hanging around, so find me. And thank you all for taking the time to listen. All right, thanks.